Okay, we're going to review writing the interval and inequality notation for these graphs. There are only four kinds of graphs. The kind where you have a beginning and an end, you've shaded in between. The kind where you have a beginning and it goes to infinity. The kind where it starts over here at negative infinity and it has a stopping place. And then the kind where it starts at negative infinity, it stops, it starts again, and then it goes to positive infinity. That's the only four kind of graphs there are. There can't be any other kind. So we'll look at each one individually. If you're not understanding about the open circle and the filled circle, that's a separate video. Right now, all I'm doing, I'm going to assume you understand that. Right now I'm just showing you how to write it in interval notation. Interval notation is always going to be parentheses or brackets or some combination of the both of those. Okay? And it's going to be a number, a comma, and a number. And you always read the graphs from left to right. So this number right here should always come first. It's -2, 7. That's it. It's saying start shading at -2 and then continue to shade until you get to 7 and then stop. That's all there is to it. Now, to determine whether it's parentheses or brackets, you determines whether it's open or closed. Open gets a parentheses, shaded and filled in gets a bracket. So when it's inequality notation, it's also the same thing. You're just going to put where you start. It's always going to be a less than symbol. I'm going to say it again. The next thing is always a less than symbol. You put the number where you start. Whatever this number is, that number goes right there. And then always a less than symbol. You're going to put an X because we're talking about an X-axis. You're always going to put a less than symbol again. I'm going to say it one more time. You will always put a less than symbol next. And then you're going to end it with that number. These three things right here in the middle will always be there. The only other thing you have to do now is go back and make sure that whether or not you put a bar underneath either one of these symbols. And since this bracket is behind the 7, you do put a bar right there. But the less than, the X, and the less than is the same every time you have shading in between. The left number goes on the left side. The right number goes on the right side. When you have a starting place and it goes to infinity, then you're going to write that down exactly, 6, infinity. And it should always be in that order. The number that came first, and then the infinity symbol, because that's the number on the right. The number on the left goes first, the number on the right goes second. Since this is open, you get a parentheses. Infinity always gets a parentheses. When you're doing shading for something that goes toward infinity, all you're going to do every time is put an X and then put the number. It'll always be in that order. X and then the number. X and then the number. And all you got to do now is use the symbols, the less than or greater than, to show me which way we're shading. We shaded on the right, so you're going to use greater than. When you have shading that starts at negative infinity, because that's if it's going that way, then that's pointing toward negative infinity. So negative infinity, that's where it starts, so that's the one we're going to write down first. Put a comma and then put where it stops. Negative infinity always gets a parentheses. It will never, ever, ever be a bracket. This number right here, since it's filled in, we're going to put a bracket. Since this is shaded toward infinity or negative infinity, we're going to do it just like we did this one. We're going to put our X and then we're going to put our 10. And then you're going to use the arrow to tell me which way to shade. We shaded to the left, so we're going to point the arrow to the left. Since this one is filled in, we are going to put a bar underneath it. This one did not get a bar because it was an open circle. This one gets a bar because it's a filled in circle. Lastly, if we've got two pieces, then over here we're going to have two pieces. Our interval, there'll be two intervals. We'll have one right here, we'll have one right there, and we'll have the union symbol in between. Over here, we'll have two inequalities with the word or in between. So this one is just a combination of these two problems put together. See, this one is just like this one. This side is just like this side. So this is negative infinity to 5, and then 7 to positive infinity. So this first one, it's negative infinity, comma, 5. And then this one is 7, comma, positive infinity. Infinities always get parentheses. These are both open, so they're both going to get parentheses. This one, we get an x and a 5. This one, we get an x and a 7. Look at how it's shaded to figure out what symbol goes there. It's shaded left, so we're going to put that symbol. This one's shaded to the right, so we're going to put that symbol. And that's all there is to writing intervals and inequalities. Here are 4 problems for you to practice.